The grand mansion stood in the heart of an exclusive neighborhood, a clear testament to Michael's immense success. From its towering windows, Michael often gazed out over his vast property with pride, reflecting on the relentless effort and sleepless nights that had led him to this pinnacle. He was wealthy, respected, and powerful, the very image of an accomplished man. Beside him was Rachel, his poised and graceful wife. Her calm demeanor seemed to match his satisfaction, yet there was a quiet mystery in her eyes that Michael, preoccupied with his triumphs, failed to notice. "Is this what people call paradise on earth, Michael?" she asked softly. He smiled warmly and embraced her. "Yes, Rachel. This is everything I've ever dreamed of, and it's only the beginning for us." Michael's success had been built on sheer determination and sacrifice. His tireless dedication to work was his way of life, something Rachel both admired and tolerated. "Let's go out tonight," he said with excitement. "I reserved your favorite restaurant. You deserve the best, Rachel." She nodded with a faint smile, hiding her dissatisfaction behind a mask of politeness. Michael, too engrossed in his schedule and glued to his phone, didn't notice the subtle change in her expression. Michael's world revolved around deals, appointments, and major decisions. He believed Rachel was the perfect partner to stand beside him, someone who appreciated the life he'd created for them. "All of this is for us, for our future. I want you to always feel secure and surrounded by the best of everything," he told her, watching as she adjusted her pearl necklace in the mirror. "I know, Michael. I'm lucky to be with you," Rachel replied, enigmatically, her tone carefully veiling her true emotions. Michael smiled, convinced his life was as perfect as it seemed. To him, every night Rachel spent out at the movies was just another example of her taking a little time for herself, something he wholeheartedly supported. "Enjoy the movie, dear," he'd say, pleased she was finding time to relax. But Rachel's reality was far from what Michael imagined. Instead of heading to a theater, she would drive to a quiet supermarket parking lot nearby. There, she would meet Terry, Michael's younger brother, who shared her secret ambition, finding a way to eliminate Michael and claim his fortune. That evening, Rachel arrived at their usual meeting spot and adjusted her rearview mirror before stepping out of the car. Terry was already there, leaning casually against a post, his sharp gaze reflecting his determination. "Is everything ready?" he asked bluntly, his voice low and cautious. "Yes, it's all set," Rachel replied, scanning the area to ensure they were alone. She outlined the plan. Michael would be taking the car early the next morning for an important meeting. It would look like a tragic accident, and no one would suspect a thing. Terry nodded, his satisfaction clear. For both of them, this was the perfect opportunity to seize the wealth they craved. It wasn't just about being free of Michael. It was about securing a life of comfort and luxury that his fortune could provide. They had planned every detail carefully. Terry, trusted by Michael and given access to the mansion's garage, would tamper with the car's brakes, ensuring the setup was flawless. Everything would appear natural, just a tragic mishap. For Rachel and Terry, this was their moment to rewrite their lives. All that stood between them and their goal was one final, decisive step. "It'll seem like an unfortunate accident, something no one could have controlled," Terry said confidently, his voice carrying no hesitation. "No one will suspect a thing, and the fortune will be yours, Rachel," he concluded, with a smug smile. Rachel simply nodded, her face calm yet satisfied. She felt assured that this plan would give her everything she desired. But what neither of them realized was that they weren't as alone as they thought. Hiding in the shadows of the parking lot was William, a young boy seeking shelter from the cold. William, sharp and observant despite his tough life on the streets, had noticed the hushed tones and secretive behavior of the pair. Intrigued, he crept closer, staying low behind a parked car as he strained to hear their conversation. As the words reached his ears, the shocking reality of what they were planning sank in. Michael, the man they were speaking of, was the target of their devious plot, a scheme to strip him of his fortune and end his life. Though young, William immediately understood the weight of what he had overheard. While Rachel and Terry exchanged looks of determination, reinforcing their commitment to the plan, William listened carefully, his heart pounding. "Tomorrow morning, he'll leave early. There's no room for error," Rachel said, her voice full of confidence. "Exactly," Terry replied with a dark chuckle. "He doesn't suspect a thing." For Rachel and Terry, it was merely a matter of time before their twisted plan came to fruition. To William, however, their conversation felt like a dangerous warning, a plot he couldn't ignore. Despite the fear coursing through him, he knew he had to act. Living on the streets, William had no family or support, and to most, he was invisible. Yet his conscience told him that he couldn't stand by and let this happen. As Rachel and Terry parted ways, agreeing not to contact each other until after their plan was carried out, William remained hidden. His heart was racing, but his resolve was firm. He needed to warn Michael, even if he had no idea how the man might react to him. When Rachel returned to her car and drove away, William made a bold decision. He had to find out where she lived and tell Michael everything before it was too late. Slipping out of his hiding spot, he began trailing her car through the quiet streets, careful to keep his distance while ensuring he didn't lose sight of her. Rachel drove, completely unaware that she was being followed. The scenery began to change as the houses grew larger and more extravagant. Eventually, she turned onto a tree-lined lane that ended at a grand estate. William slowed as he approached, the imposing mansion coming into view even under the dim glow of the streetlights. The tall gates, the illuminated driveway, and the elegant structure of the house all painted a picture of immense wealth and power. But to William, the scene was far from welcoming. It carried the heavy weight of the sinister plan Rachel and Terry had plotted. He watched as Rachel entered the gates without hesitation and disappeared into the mansion, leaving him hidden in the shadows of the trees outside. As William crept closer to the house, he felt the enormity of the task ahead. This was where Michael lived, the man whose life and fortune were at stake. Despite being just a boy, he knew the importance of what he had to do. He couldn't let greed and betrayal take everything from this man. "I have to tell him, he needs to know what they're planning," William murmured to himself, his voice trembling but determined. Though fear still gripped him, it began to give way to a growing sense of purpose. He had nothing to offer but the truth, and as a street boy, he knew the odds of being taken seriously were slim. Yet he also knew he couldn't let that stop him. As he stood there, staring at the mansion and thinking about how to approach Michael, William's determination solidified. No matter how untouchable Michael seemed, William was resolved to protect him from the darkness that loomed so close. He didn't know how, but William was determined to make Michael believe him. "I have to try. If I don't do something, a tragedy will happen," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible against the stillness of the night. The grand, illuminated mansion before him seemed like a symbol of perfection, a life so far removed from the harsh reality he knew. Yet, the stark contrast of that image with the sinister plot he overheard from Rachel and Terry weighed heavily on his chest. How could someone so close to Michael harbor such greed and malice, plotting his downfall just for money? Having grown up on the streets, William had learned early on the value of survival, but he couldn't fathom destroying a life for selfish gain. That realization strengthened his resolve. As soon as he had the chance, he would face Michael and tell him everything. For now, he stayed hidden in the shadows, watching the mansion intently and memorizing every detail to ensure he could find his way back. With the image of the house etched in his mind, he finally crept away, his steps quiet but determined. He didn't know if Michael would believe him, but he was certain that his attempt could make all the difference. The next morning, William arrived early and positioned himself near the gates of the mansion. He had spent the night replaying everything he had overheard, and the urgency to warn Michael now felt almost suffocating. Yet, the fear of being dismissed nagged at him. "What if he ignores me? What if he doesn't believe me?" he muttered under his breath, the uncertainty gnawing at his courage. But as he remembered Rachel and Terry's laughter while discussing their wicked plan, His determination grew stronger. He couldn't let their greed destroy an innocent man. Time passed slowly, until finally, William saw a car approaching the gates. It was Michael. With a burst of desperate courage, the boy ran toward the car, frantically waving to get his attention. Michael, startled by the sudden appearance of a boy, slowed the car and rolled down the window. His expression was a mix of irritation and confusion. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. "I need to speak to you. It's urgent. It's about your safety," William said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Michael's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but there was something about the boy's intensity that made him pause. "All right, speak quickly. What's so important?" he said, his tone firm. William took a deep breath, the weight of his words pressing heavily on him. "I overheard a conversation last night, between your wife and your brother, Terry," he began, carefully watching Michael's face for a reaction. "They're planning something to hurt you. They want your money." Michael's expression shifted, disbelief washing over his face. A dry laugh escaped him as he shook his head. "That's ridiculous. Rachel and Terry would never do something like that," he said dismissively. But William pressed on, his voice more urgent. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I heard everything. They talked about tampering with your car to cause an accident. Please, sir, just check the brakes before you leave. I'm not lying." Michael stared at the boy, his skepticism fading as he noticed the fear and sincerity in William's eyes. Though his rational mind told him this was absurd, a gut feeling, a nearly involuntary instinct, told him to listen. Without saying a word, Michael stepped out of the car and called his mechanic to inspect the brakes. The minutes that followed felt like hours to both of them. When the mechanic finally emerged, his face was grave. "The brakes have been tampered with," he said, his voice heavy. Michael felt a cold chill run through him as the reality of the situation sank in. His mind raced, struggling to process the betrayal. "This can't be happening," he muttered, almost to himself. "Not Rachel? Not Terry?" From the sidelines, William watched as Michael's face shifted from disbelief to horror. It was clear he now understood the gravity of the situation. Turning to the boy, Michael no longer looked at him with suspicion. Instead, his expression softened, showing a mix of gratitude and recognition. "Why did you do this? Why risk so much to warn someone you don't even know?" Michael asked, his voice quieter now. William lowered his head, unsure of how to respond. The truth was, he didn't fully understand it himself, but what he did know was that he couldn't stand by and let a terrible injustice unfold. I just knew it was wrong, and you needed to know," William said, his voice trembling but firm. Michael, still reeling from the revelation, stood in stunned silence. The betrayal was almost too much to process. The wife he had trusted implicitly and the brother he had supported unconditionally were conspiring to take him out of the picture. The evidence was undeniable, and he now understood the very real danger he was in. He turned back to William, his gaze filled with more than gratitude. There was also a silent apology for nearly dismissing the boy's warning, a warning that, if ignored, could have cost him his life. Michael straightened, his resolve strengthening as he faced William. "I owe you my life, boy. I don't know how, but I'll find a way to reward your courage," he said earnestly. William simply nodded, still processing the gravity of the situation and the impact of his actions. The morning had been a whirlwind of emotions for Michael. Discovering that his car's brakes had been sabotaged only confirmed the boy's warning. As he returned to find William waiting for him, he knelt to the boy's height and spoke with deep sincerity. "You saved my life. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here right now." William nodded again, humbled by Michael's gratitude, but his determination remained unwavering. Michael knew he couldn't face this situation alone. He needed someone he could trust, someone to help him plan his next move and ensure Rachel and Terry wouldn't suspect a thing. "I need you to stay by my side, boy. Together, we'll expose them for who they really are," Michael said, studying the determined expression on William's face. "I'll help you. They won't even see it coming. William replied, his voice resolute. Thinking quickly, Michael began to formulate a plan. Confronting Rachel and Terry outright wouldn't be enough. They needed to feel the consequences of their actions and believe their plan had succeeded. "I'm going to change my will," Michael said, his voice steady with conviction. "I'll arrange it so that if I die suspiciously, Rachel gets nothing." William's eyes widened as he listened. "So, even if they go through with it, they won't gain anything?" he asked, his understanding of the plan growing. "Exactly," Michael confirmed, pleased by the boy's sharpness. As he explained the details, he couldn't help but admire William's courage and sense of justice. Despite everything the boy had been through, he displayed a maturity and loyalty that impressed Michael deeply. "From now on, we act together. I'll make sure you'll never have to worry about anything again. In return, you'll be my eyes and ears," Michael said firmly. Moved by Michael's trust in him, William nodded, ready to see the plan through to the end. Michael realized they needed an additional step to solidify their plan and ensure Rachel and Terry wouldn't suspect anything. After a moment of reflection, he said, "Besides changing the will, we need to take this further. I'll stage an accident. They need to believe they've succeeded." William's eyes widened in surprise before a knowing smile crossed his face. "So, they'll think you're gone, and it'll all feel safe to them," he murmured, already imagining how this would unravel Rachel and Terry's confidence. "Exactly," Michael said, nodding. "Once they think their plan has worked, we'll reveal everything." William's confidence grew as he realized the impact their plan could have. "I'm with you," he said, his voice steady. The decisive night arrived, and Michael and William were ready to execute their carefully crafted plan. Before heading to the road, Michael stopped at a predetermined spot to pick up William, who was waiting anxiously. As William climbed into the car, he exchanged a determined look with Michael. "It's time, kid. We need everything to look real so they'll believe it completely," Michael said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I'm with you, Mr. Michael. Let's do this," William replied, his voice brimming with courage and determination. Michael drove calmly along the deserted road where the accident was carefully planned to take place. Earlier, he had informed Rachel that he would be spending a few days at the country house to unwind. Rachel, satisfied with the news, bid him farewell with a subtle smile. "Take care, dear, and enjoy the rest," she said, believing that her goal was finally within reach. Michael, hiding his knowledge of the plot, kept his expression neutral as he left, with William by his side. When they arrived at the isolated location, Michael and William got out of the car and began setting the stage. William observed every step closely, ensuring that no detail was left behind that could reveal their ruse. He even searched the car's interior to make sure there were no personal belongings of Michael's that could identify him. "Everything's clear here, sir," William said confidently, his precision impressing Michael. "Perfect," Michael replied, pleased with the boy's diligence. The next step was the most delicate. Michael prepared a device that would ignite a fire, reducing the car to a heap of unrecognizable metal and ash, something no one would question. After retreating to a safe distance with William, Michael activated the device. Flames quickly engulfed the car, lighting up the dark sky with a bright and destructive glow. William watched the fire in a mix of fascination and apprehension as it consumed the vehicle until all that remained was a charred and unrecognizable frame. To anyone who saw the scene, it would look like the tragic end of a man on an isolated road. By the next morning, news of the accident had spread quickly. The burnt car had been discovered, and everyone assumed Michael was dead. Rachel received the news with a carefully composed expression of shock. But in her private moments, her eyes betrayed her relief. "He's really gone now," she murmured to Terry during one of their clandestine conversations. Terry, unable to contain his grin of satisfaction, replied, "Now we just wait for the inheritance. Everything we wanted is within our grasp." Rachel, pretending to be a grieving widow, played her role to perfection. She accepted condolences with a reserved demeanor, convincing everyone she was a heartbroken wife in mourning. But when she was alone, she was already planning her future with Terry. The pair, believing their plan had gone off without a hitch, felt increasingly confident that Michael's fortune was as good as theirs. Meanwhile, William stayed vigilant. He kept a low profile, discreetly monitoring Rachel and Terry as they moved through their daily lives. He noted how they exchanged satisfied glances and discussed details about securing the inheritance. Every step they took, William reported back to Michael, who was now safely hidden. "They're completely convinced you're gone, and they're already thinking the money is guaranteed," William said, his tone serious. Michael listened carefully, sensing that the success of their plan was drawing closer. Now, with confirmation that Rachel and Terry had taken the bait, it was time to move forward with the next phase. A few days after the staged accident, Rachel and Terry, now posing as the grieving widow and mourning brother-in-law, visited Michael's lawyer to begin the inheritance process. Confident that nothing could stand in their way, they approached the office with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Rachel tried to mask her emotions, but the anticipation was palpable. By her side, Terry exchanged knowing glances with her, his confidence evident. "Soon, all of this will just be a memory," he said with a discreet smile. Rachel nodded slightly, barely containing her excitement. When they entered the lawyer's office, they were greeted by Michael's attorney, who maintained a solemn and professional demeanor. He offered Rachel and Terry seats and explained, "Please be patient. We'll need to carefully review all the documents before finalizing anything." As he spoke, he lifted a thick folder from his desk, emphasizing the seriousness of the process. Rachel and Terry, convinced they were only moments away from claiming their prize, waited eagerly, their confidence unwavering. Little did they know, the game was far from over. Rachel nodded with a carefully practiced expression of grief, ensuring she appeared as the mourning widow fulfilling formalities. In truth, her heart was elsewhere, lightened by the thought that everything she had schemed for was now within reach. The lawyer began reading Michael's will, methodically detailing his assets, properties, and provisions. As the amounts and holdings were listed, Rachel's pulse quickened, and she struggled to mask her growing excitement. Everything seemed to align perfectly with her dreams. But then, the tone shifted. The lawyer cleared his throat and said, "There's a special clause here that was recently added." His voice was calm, but serious. Rachel and Terry exchanged brief glances, their confusion evident, though they kept their composure. "Just a minor detail, I assume," Terry said, forcing a tone of indifference. The lawyer continued, his words deliberate. "The new clause states that Michael's inheritance can only be claimed by his wife if he dies of natural causes. In the event of an accident or any suspicious circumstances, the wife and her heirs are excluded from receiving the estate." Each word fell like a hammer, and the weight of the revelation stunned Rachel and Terry. For a moment, they were frozen, their shock written plainly on their faces. Rachel's eyes widened in disbelief, and her carefully maintained mask of composure began to crack. This must be a mistake," Rachel stammered, her voice trembling as she fought to steady herself. She glanced at Terry, searching for reassurance, but found only his own frustration and confusion. "Yes," Terry said, his voice tight with forced calm. "Michael wouldn't do something like this. Not without telling us, not without telling Rachel." The lawyer observed them with a neutral but faintly disapproving expression. "This was Michael's decision, and it is fully documented. The clause was added just days before the accident," he explained firmly. Rachel's expression shifted as anger began to surface. She glared at Terry, silently demanding answers he didn't have. Terry, shaking his head as if to deny the reality of the situation, was at a loss for words. Finally, Rachel, unable to contain her fury, slammed her hands on the desk. "This is unacceptable. He did this on purpose," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. The facade of the grieving widow was beginning to crumble. The lawyer watched her reaction closely, his gaze sharp and calculating. He said nothing, but seemed to sense that something was amiss. Then, the unexpected happened. The door to the office opened, and Michael stepped in, alive and well, with William at his side. Rachel and Terry turned, their faces draining of color as they saw the man they believed was dead standing before them. Shock and fear paralyzed them as Michael walked into the room with a calm yet resolute demeanor. "Surprised to see me?" Michael asked, his voice steady but filled with indignation. His piercing gaze settled on Rachel and Terry, who remained frozen, unable to muster a single word in their defense. William stood beside Michael, his expression one of quiet triumph. He had been part of every step of the plan and now watched as the truth unraveled before their eyes. Michael took another step closer, his presence commanding. "I know everything," he said, his voice firm. "I know about your plan. I know about your conversation in the parking lot. I know how much you wanted me gone so you could take my money." Rachel and Terry's panic was evident as they exchanged desperate glances, realizing their betrayal had been exposed. Michael continued advancing, each step deliberate and heavy with the weight of betrayal. His disappointment was palpable, and the silence in the room was suffocating. The air between them was charged with unspoken accusations and the consequences of their actions. "You really thought you could get rid of me? That everything would fall perfectly into place for you? That there would be no consequences?" Michael's voice echoed with quiet fury, the control in his tone amplifying the depth of his pain. He stopped a few feet from them, his eyes hard and unwavering. Rachel and Terry could do nothing but stare, their guilt and fear plain on their faces as the man they had tried to destroy confronted them with unflinching resolve. Rachel remained silent for a moment, her eyes darting toward Michael, searching desperately for any hint of pity or an opening she could exploit to soften the situation. "Michael, we only wanted," she began, her voice trembling as she tried to sound remorseful. But Michael's cold, unflinching gaze cut her off, making it clear there was no room for more lies. "Wanted what, Rachel?" he demanded, his voice steady and sharp. "You wanted everything I built, everything I fought for and shared with you. And you, Terry," he said, turning his piercing stare to his brother. "I thought we were family. I thought we were brothers. And you? You stabbed me in the back." Each word hit with devastating precision. Terry, who had been avoiding Michael's gaze, finally looked up, shame and regret etched across his face. He shrank under the weight of Michael's words, knowing no excuse could undo what he had done. Yet, almost instinctively, he attempted to justify himself. "Michael, it was a mistake. I was confused. Rachel made me believe it was best for her, that you were the problem," Terry stammered, his voice faltering. Michael's eyes narrowed, his tone colder than ever. "Don't you dare blame Rachel for your choices, Terry. Every step, every detail, you chose this. You chose to betray me. You believed my life, my future, could just be discarded like it meant nothing. That was your decision." Hearing this, Rachel's composure began to crumble. Realizing her options were slipping away, she raised her voice, her words spilling out with a mix of desperation and anger. "Michael, we both know you've distanced yourself over the years. I felt invisible, alone. You were always focused on your businesses, your empire. All I wanted was someone who truly saw me," she said, her frustration boiling over. "I couldn't live in the shadow of a man who was more married to his fortune than to me. If that's betrayal, then I'm sorry, but I didn't want to keep being just a decoration in your perfect life." Michael listened, his expression unwavering. Whatever shred of compassion he might have held onto was gone, dissolved by the pain of her actions. "And you chose to resolve it by planning my death?" he asked, his voice rising slightly, filled with controlled fury. "Instead of talking, instead of seeking a solution, you decided to erase me, as if I was disposable." He turned to Terry, the sadness in his eyes still evident despite the anger in his voice. "And you, Terry, did you ever understand what loyalty is? What family means? Because what you did, it's the farthest thing from being a brother." As Michael's words hung heavily in the air, William stood silently by his side, watching the confrontation unfold. The boy, who had overheard Rachel and Terry's conspiracy, now witnessed justice taking shape. Every word Michael spoke carried the weight of truth, and William, filled with respect and empathy, felt proud to have played his part in uncovering the betrayal. Michael turned back to the lawyer and gave him a slight nod. The lawyer, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, signaled toward the door. A moment later, 2 police officers entered the room. Their uniforms, an unmistakable sign of what was about to happen. Rachel and Terry froze at the sight of the officers, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. Rachel's carefully constructed mask of control shattered completely as panic took over. "Michael, you can't do this!" she cried, her voice now shrill with desperation. "I loved you! I did this for us!" Her tone twisted, teetering between rage and fear as she clung to any chance of justification. Michael remained resolute, unmoved by her pleas. His voice was firm, final. "You didn't do this for us, Rachel. You did it for yourself, for your greed. If there had been even an ounce of love, you would have made a different choice. But you didn't, and now you'll face the consequences." As the officers handcuffed Rachel and Terry, Michael stood watching, his expression a mix of pain and relief. The chapter was closing, but it was a bitter ending, one that left scars deeper than he could have imagined. Rachel and Terry were led away, their faces a mixture of hatred and regret, their protests falling on deaf ears. Michael turned his gaze to William, who remained by his side. In the boy's eyes, he saw not only loyalty, but hope, a reminder that even in the midst of betrayal, courage and integrity could prevail. And though Michael's heart was heavy, there was a sense of quiet resolution. Justice, though painful, had finally been served. Michael knew this moment wouldn't bring happiness, but it delivered the cold and necessary justice he had sought. Standing beside him, William observed the outcome with quiet satisfaction. He understood that his intervention had brought a bitter truth to light and ensured the man beside him now had a secure future. When the police finally left, taking Rachel and Terry away, a heavy silence filled the office. Michael turned to William, the weight of the entire ordeal momentarily easing. Placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, he spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "If it weren't for you, kid, I wouldn't be here to see this happen." William, who had stood resolute throughout, simply nodded. Behind the harsh truth of everything that had unfolded, he felt something profound, an unbreakable bond of trust that had been forged between him and Michael. As the dust settled following the arrest of Rachel and Terry, Michael began to feel the crushing weight of the past weeks gradually lift. He knew his life would never be the same. The betrayal he had experienced left deep scars, but it also gave him a renewed perspective on trust, something precious, not to be given lightly. Sitting in his office later that evening, Michael reflected on the life he now had to rebuild. His gaze shifted to William, the street boy who had risked everything to save him and had become his unexpected ally and his salvation. Michael knew that this boy deserved a chance for a better future, far from the dangers and uncertainties of the streets. "Come, sit with me," Michael said, gesturing for William to join him. As the boy sat down, Michael looked at him with a depth of admiration William didn't yet fully understand. "You gave me something no one else did," Michael began, his voice filled with gratitude. "Your loyalty saved me, and I'll never forget it." William, shy and overwhelmed, looked down, trying to hold back his emotions. "I just did what I thought was right, Mr. Michael," he said softly. "I couldn't let them do that to you." Michael smiled warmly, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. He saw something extraordinary in William, something that went beyond the boy's actions. At that moment, Michael made a decision that would alter both of their lives forever. "I want you to be part of my family, William," he said firmly. "I'll take care of you, help you build a future, and more than that, I'll teach you everything I know, so you can grow safely and have the opportunities you deserve." The boy's eyes widened with surprise, and for the first time in a long while, they sparkled with hope. Michael wasn't finished. Over the following days, he revised his will once more, this time to include William as the main heir to his empire. Michael was determined not only to protect his legacy, but also to ensure the boy would be prepared to lead it one day. "This means that in the future, everything will be yours," Michael explained as he went over the details with William. "But we'll work together to make sure you're ready. You'll learn everything you need to know to become a wise and just leader." William, who had grown up without family or security, was overwhelmed by the gesture. He tried to hold back his tears, but they slipped through despite his best efforts. Michael, seeing the emotions written across the boy's face, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You deserve this, William," Michael said gently, "and I'll be by your side every step of the way. You'll never have to face the hardships you've endured ever again." At that moment, a profound bond was sealed between them. William felt the immense weight of the trust Michael had placed in him, and silently vowed to honor it. He promised himself that he would live up to Michael's belief in him and become a man of integrity and value. From that day forward, their lives entered a new phase. No longer just mentor and apprentice, they became a true family. Together, they embarked on a journey to build a future filled with possibilities. As the mansion adapted to William's presence, Michael began teaching him the intricacies of the empire he had built. At first, William felt out of place, as though he was living in a dream that could end at any moment. But Michael, with his patience and determination, ensured the boy understood that he belonged. "You're going to learn everything I know, kid," Michael said one evening as they worked together. "I don't want you to just inherit what I built. I want you to understand it, to lead it with intelligence and integrity." The boy nodded, a mixture of pride and determination on his face. For the first time, he truly believed in the possibility of a bright future, and with Michael's guidance, he knew he could become someone worthy of the trust placed in him. Each day, Michael introduced a new lesson, each one building William's confidence and sharpening his skills. Michael didn't just teach the practicalities of business, but emphasized values that formed the foundation of true leadership. Respect, responsibility, and honesty are what sustain real leadership, Michael often said. If you carry these values with you, you'll be someone who makes a difference. William hung on to every word, driven by a deep desire to become the person Michael believed he could be. Over time, the boy's admiration for his mentor grew into an unshakable resolve to prove himself worthy of Michael's trust. For Michael, the time spent with William sparked a new joy in his life, a purpose beyond business success. Watching the boy transform and grow reignited something within him. Michael realized that life wasn't just about accumulating wealth, but about leaving behind a legacy that mattered. "You're my family now, William," Michael said one day, seeing the boy struggle through a challenging moment during his training. And family means support, trust, and always being there for one another. This sentiment gave Michael a new reason to live, one he hadn't anticipated finding. Their relationship deepened, evolving into something far greater than mentor and apprentice. Quiet dinners, heartfelt conversations about life and the future, and moments of shared laughter brought life back into the once cold mansion. For William, this experience was transformative, a second chance at life. For the first time, he had a home, something he had never known. With Michael's encouragement, he began to believe in his potential, growing stronger and more capable each day. As time passed, the bond between Michael and William solidified. They became a true team, father and son in every sense that mattered, united by mutual respect and loyalty. The mansion, once filled with an empty silence, now brimmed with warmth and life. The air was alive with an energy born of trust, hope, and a shared sense of purpose. Together, Michael and William faced every challenge, building a future filled with possibilities. Their journey was more than just one of survival. It was a story of redemption, growth, and an enduring partnership. United by a dark past, they were now moving toward a brighter future. The story of Michael and William reminds us that loyalty and trust are life's greatest treasures. Michael, betrayed by those he once held dear, found an unlikely ally in William, a street boy who risked everything to save him. Together, they show that family isn't defined by blood, but by the unwavering commitment to stand by each other during life's hardest trials. If this story moved you and you want to hear more reflections like it, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. Thank you for watching, and remember, true family is built on loyalty, trust, and love.